All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the third episode of the Systems of Wealth podcast. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest, someone that is a original mentor, friend, inspiration, someone that has taken a chance on me long before anybody else ever did. And I want to use this as a opportunity just to say thank you, Scott. I really, really appreciate you. But today, I am joined by the legend, Scott Schang. Scott, thank you so much for joining me today, my friend. I really appreciate it.
Of course, man.
You're
Anytime.
the I want to use today as really like I've told you about my sort of vision for this podcast of just like building a library of conversations of the people that have made a big impact on me that I think
Yeah.
are very special to me, and people that have amazing stories, knowledge that's think much bigger and smarter than I do. So I want to use this as a way to share all that information. So but I want to use today, or at least start with this podcast, a little bit of just going back to kind of your like origin story, just to give people like a introduction on you, who you are, and sort of your journey up until this point. We can weave that into how we met and our origin story, because I always love that story. I think it's super fun, and talk about kind of what we're all working on nowadays. But yeah, if you just want to do like a quick intro on sort of your background and what you've been working on up until this point in your journey.
How far back you want to go?
Let's go to how did you get started in the mortgage business? Let's start there.
Mortgage business. Okay. So I've always I've always been an entrepreneur my
Okay.
whole life.
Yeah.
And I've told you this. I'm not embarrassed about this, but I'm a high school dropout.
Yep.
So I have always, my parents were self-employed, and so I've never been in an environment where you had like a career. My parents never talked about college when I was growing up.
Right.
I have a overactive imagination, so it may just be that it never seemed like it was on the table because I was very bored in school,
Right.
and by all outwards appearances, I was not a good student. But I'm a good student of my imagination and seeking out knowledge and experience that I'm interested in.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. That makes
And
sense.
and so and yeah, so I got in the mortgage industry in 1998.
Okay.
I actually had a friend who worked for a mortgage industry, and they wanted to explore expanding into farm equipment leasing.
Okay.
And I had no idea what farm equipment leasing
Yeah.
was, but I started doing research and I started working on it, and I just kind of hung out, saw what everybody else was doing in the business.
Hmm.
It was a very small business, and I started. I'm very much a systems and processes person.
Yep.
The way I like to describe it is that I tell people, and I believe that I'm the laziest person on the planet. And it's not that I don't work hard, it's that all of the work that I do, I put into leveraging so that I only have to do it once, and then
Yes.
I can amplify that effort into as many different things as possible.
Yes. We love work where you do it once and you get like a compound effect of that effort over and over again. We love that.
Yeah, so one of that is building a system or building a process.
Right.
So if this is your input, what has to happen to it, how much of that can be automated or tracked so that you're paying attention to the metrics and not the movement.
Yes.
And so that's how I've always been hardwired. I've always been hardwired on how can I do this one thing and then leverage it. And that goes, for me, that goes just as much into the technical aspects of whatever job is in front of me or whatever challenges in front of me. But I also use that exact same strategy for relationships.
Right.
So I'm very, very introverted. I'm not, I don't, I say I don't like people, and that's not really it. Introverts don't, it's not that introverts don't like people. It's just that it drains our
Yeah.
energy.
And you need to like recharge
You
being
just, you,
isolated.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because I agree. That's like that's exactly how I am too.
Yeah, it was funny. I read a book one time by a neurologist that was studying introverts and extroverts.
Is it called
And
Quiet?
pardon me?
Is it called Quiet?
Yes, quiet.
Yeah, I
And
love
she
that book.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, and she actually She just did an interview with Lex Friedman. I think she has
Okay.
another book out.
Awesome.
And so she had this concept called shared trait theory, which is
Hmm.
very, very common. So a lot of really introverted people can be extroverts, but like you said, it just sort of drains your energy
Yeah.
and things like that.
Right.
So I tend to build a smaller number of deeper relationships with
Hmm.
people um that really interest me,
Right.
and that was one of the things that I really liked about you is just this natural curiosity about you. You have this seeking spirit about you, and like you have a lot of questions and you don't have a lot of fears.
Yeah.
And that just instantly I really connected with your energy and your vision, and you're obviously very intelligent, and just the way that you process information, and it's like I love that stuff. That's what gives me energy is seeing people that are just going 100 million miles an hour and figuring it out as you go along.
That's always how it's been for me. And I
You
just
know?
to touch on it a little bit, like our origin story, how we met. So when I was 19 and just getting started, I was just learning Facebook ads at the time. And the mentor that I had invested in, it was like a 30 days to getting your first client sort of sense. And it was just like kind of basic stuff. It was like, reaching out to referral network and doing kind of like cold emails and cold pay and just like offering to work for free was sort of the strategy. And so what I was doing was, and I wasn't really getting any luck with that for a couple months. And then I reached out to my idea was, okay, I'm going to approach nonprofits here in Huntington and basically offer to work for free just to get some experience and sort of get a testimonial and kind of go from there. And so that's what I did. I reached out to a couple nonprofits here, and the only person to get back to me was you. You at the time were serving on the board of Patriots and Paws, and we met and had lunch. And you were like, "Well, I could use your help on the mortgage business as well." And so you brought me in, and again, like you basically you took a chance on me long before I ever knew what I was doing, long before anybody ever saw like, any possible capabilities in me. And it's funny because as I've, got had the opportunity and the experience to work with you over the last couple of years, like I have learned so much about that systems and processes way of thinking and having an ideal outcome and a vision and looking for different ways of leverage, and leverage being like my own time and my own labor, but how that like other people can play a role in that as well. And
Yep.
what I've always loved about you is just you have such a magical suit, like you have your own superpower, something that you're like you are so good at, but you put it out as just like it's not about me, this is about the information and it's about me being able to serve and help. And I've always loved that about you because it's refreshing to have like a humble almost approach of just like this isn't about me and I can tap into like this awesome like way of expressing this information and just leading from a place of help. And it's had such a big impact on how I continue to approach things and how I'm doing things now. So I want to get into sort of like you and I met when we met and had lunch that one time. I mean, this was 2017. This is about 5 years ago now. Where was Find My Way Home at the time? Like, what was the approach to the site? It was still just educating consumers and connecting them
Yeah.
with experts, right? That was really the approach.
I don't remember how we were. Yeah, I don't remember how we were distributing, but we were definitely distributing. So, Find My Way Home was a consumer facing website that we started in. I always say I started it in the fourth quarter of 2007
Mhm.
because that was, we saw the crash coming. It had kind of started to happen. We definitely knew it was coming because there was so much greed and just excess and abuse in the mortgage industry.
Mm.
And what happened is there was this it was really an astronomical shift in trust in our industry, and you don't often have that to the scale or degree that we experienced in the mortgage industry, specifically mortgage brokers, which was what I was an independent mortgage broker. And so we were literally on the 24/7 news cycle, with all news channels saying that mortgage lenders caused the real estate crash and were responsible for all of these people losing their homes.
Right.
Now, while there was some partial truth to that, The thing that was 100% true is that now consumers are less likely to trust a salesperson. So I started a website and I just wrote about, because here's something that's interesting. It is, well, it's really not that interesting because it's many people know this, but anytime there is there is conflict or uncertainty or tragedy, um, there is an equal and opposite opportunity
Yes,
to the other side of that.
100%.
So while while home values were plummeting and people were losing their homes in California where we were based, that meant homes were now affordable for first time home buyers.
Mm,
So that's where the website started. Is I went to the state, um, the state housing finance agency, and I found out all of the programs to help first time buyers get into homes. And home prices were it was unaffordable in 2006
right.
and 2007, and very similar to actually the market that we're in today. California is in the same situation,
Yep.
and something's gotta give. Nothing anywhere near what we were going through, but that's what it was. So I started. I learned WordPress. Um, I I took a class at a local community college to learn HTML so that I could fix all the
I
stuff
love
that I was breaking.
that.
And I wrote 2 to 3 articles a week for 10 straight years,
Dude,
and
crazy.
I got a lot of organic traffic, and then started building relationships with loan officers that I knew, liked, and trusted across the country that had the same servant mentality that I had. That um we don't like no. It's never no for me.
Mhm.
It's always not now.
Yes.
So anytime a consumer is reaching out, and that's also the general nature of most seekers on the internet, is they're very early entry.
Mhm.
They're very top of funnel, at least when it comes to mortgages. If it's not an impulse buy, most online consumers are in a research mode if you can catch them top of funnel when they're just trying to gather information so they can make an informed decision.
Yeah, that's what it really I mean, and like the fact that you just were publishing blog posts online for over 10 years, like I just the what I have like as I'm building systems of wealth and I'm my approach to this right now, like it's the what I keep telling myself is play the game like nobody is watching. Like just continue to put it out there and
Yes.
put it out there and take that approach to it. And you and I, like we've had a lot of conversations about what systems of wealth could be and sort of my own ideas on it. And I think like where I'm at with it right now, and I want to talk about this just sort of live on the podcast because it's fun and like this is just an idea that I've had over the weekend. But I think I'm going to pivot a little bit to sort of that approach. Like I am somebody that obviously like your what you touched on earlier, the systems and operational thinking of like this is, you have an input and what's our output. And so that was sort of the take that I've always had with personal finances is like there's a system to this. There's a system to like building a system for allocating your capital correctly and the investment mindset of multiplying your money has always been something that I'm super interested, right? And I've chased my natural curiosity. That's what that's how we found each other, was just chasing
Yeah.
my curiosity. And I
Yeah.
did the same thing with finances. And I've been able to aggregate and collect and build relationships with people that have like had a very big impact on me. And so that's sort of the approach that I think I'm going to take is like, if you want to get connected to a financial expert, like let's talk, let's have fill out a quick form, let me know what you're looking for, and then I can connect you with somebody in my network that I really think can help. And it for me, like it's nice because like I want to take the same approach. I just want to give, I want to serve, I want to help. And what's beautiful about that is sort of the magic of just creating that and the relationships that come out of it. And like there's something weird about entrepreneurship and doing that is like when you just get started and you do it and like the things that will connect the dots are something that you would never ever be able to predict in the future anyways. So I think that's the approach that I'm going to take. And I'd love your feedback on that. I love your thoughts on that.
Yeah, there's something really interesting because whenever we have these conversations, we're talking about two people. We're talking about the builders and the sausage makers, which we are, and
Yeah.
then we're talking about our consumers.
Right.
And there's nothing automatic about automation, and there's nothing easy about processes and systems.
Yeah.
If anything, the better the consumer experience, the more consistent and simplified the consumer experience, it is exponentially more intricate and involved on the back end.
100%.
Right? There's always more complexity. Again, this is my I love yin and yang, and I always love polar opposites, and
Yep.
that's really what you're talking about is you're building. We as builders, as sausage makers, are always trying to deliver something that the consumer is going to appreciate, but they don't have to think about.
Right.
And it's really that transfer of trust. So as you're
Mm.
building this product and you're building this perspective on finances and building wealth, you're really just you're an interpreter of all of these ideas and concepts that are constantly evolving.
Yes.
But you're taking them, and what you're doing is you're just creating this vehicle for transferring trust.
100%.
And
Oof.
and when you are selfless with your mission,
Mhm.
then that transfer of trust is there is as much weight in the deliverer of the message as there is in the topic that you're delivering.
Hmm.
So it comes across. If you're just out there throwing out tripwires and trying to get 999s and trial, and then you're giving them upgrades and things like that, your classic marketing. Now, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not saying those things are wrong,
Right.
but what I'm saying is if you lead with education and information first, like you do in this podcast,
Right.
right? So like people watching this are going to get to know you,
Mhm.
and they're going to know what you value based on what kind of conversations you have and who you have those conversations with.
Right.
So now I'm going to look at that and I'm going to say, wow, Noah really cares about this. This isn't just he's not just building a money making slot machine where he's trying to trick people over the tripwire and get them into his upsell drips.
Right.
You're super passionate about this stuff.
Yeah, 100%. And this is
And
something that like if I was able to find something information like this, like I feel like I'm speaking to somebody who was in my position like a couple years ago. I was just looking for like the right financial education and the right literacy
yeah,
around this stuff because I just have noticed as I've gotten deeper in my relationship with money and I've evolved with it, like my peace and how I approach life, my decisions are more intentional, how I am like the actual active income that I'm making continues to grow. And honestly, like again, we go back to it, like you being my first original mentor and like me having just such an opportunity to like immerse myself in the way that you approach things. You have always you've helped me a lot, especially like in 2020 when you and I went like pretty deep into some of these conversations and I was struggling a lot. You helped me think very abundantly. And like this
yeah.
is something that we talk about a lot is just like not thinking scarce and just like there's so much out there and just being the like what you said sort of like the facilitator of people being able to be around. Like how did you cultivate that with like in yourself? Like how have you grasped that over time? Where does that come from for you?
Oh man, I wish I could say I took this course or I
Yeah.
have these three rules, but it really isn't. Um, I mean, I am not, I don't know what it is. I mean, we grew up very, very poor in my family. I mean,
Mhm.
we didn't have a lot of anything. We lived out in the middle of the country, and we kind of lived on a self-sufficient farm. And like I said, my parents were self-employed, but we didn't have regular paychecks and stuff coming in. But for some reason, some people will be like, okay, I want to be rich. I don't want to be like my parents. I was never like that. What I really dialed into was how hard my parents tried to show the valuable things about life that didn't have to do with money. It's like, so how to be happy, or how to do things without that. So
Right.
I've never been money motivated. For me, money is a trailing indicator
Yes.
of you being passionate about something that you can give everything you have into.
Mhm.
So, and I've always, I'm a huge fan of Zig Ziglar, who is
OG.
he's been gone. He's OG, but he had this quote that I picked up on probably 30 years ago, and he said, "You can have anything you want in life if you help enough others get what they want."
Yes.
And that just always really resonated with me. And um, and I always felt like I always felt like that's what it was for me. And
Hmm.
it doesn't always pay off. And and I could even say that in some ways it's hurt me throughout my life not being money motivated,
Yeah.
but there's more to wealth than currency.
Yeah, well said. I think like that's a big part of sort of the mission of systems of wealth is to accurately define what that really means. And I think it's different for everybody. And I think defining that and like that's sort
Yeah.
of the systems and operational idea behind it too is like define what it is first, and then you can build your models and frameworks and guidelines to get yourself to this point. But having that sort of defined, which is usually like the hardest question in the first place, like knowing what it is that you want and then backtracking your way to getting that like it seems very simple and we can articulate it in that sense, but like that's not an easy thing to do to know like what you want out of this. But like for you, you've had a big impact on me of just being like, it's there, especially in entrepreneurship. It's really difficult at times to even have a like a clear path ahead of you. Like I've experienced it
Yeah.
multiple times. Like you get to this point, you're like, the road forward is completely dark and gray, and I don't even see any light. But like building without any sort of vision and just letting something naturally evolve the way it's going to be, like that's
Yes.
that's something that I've struggled with, but you've helped me along that path so very much.
Yeah, I think where that a lot of that comes from for me is understanding the things you can control and the things you can't control. And the only thing you really can control is how you react to and process the things that you cannot control.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so and this is and you and I've had a lot of these conversations about goals
Yeah.
and goal setting and
Yeah, it's
things
something I
like that.
wanted to
and
talk to you about.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and I don't like goals because um and this is kind of a Jordan Peterson thing, right?
Mhm.
So we are constantly negotiating with our future selves.
Right.
And so, how do I know who I will be in the future? Because so if I'm picking something that I want now, based on my experience up to this point, how do I know that that's going to be even valuable to
Yes.
me 5 years into the
Right.
future?
Right.
I'm going to be a different person. So for
Right.
me, the journey is the destination.
Hmm.
And it's like every step we have 100% control over how we react or how we act
Right.
in those moments.
Yes.
And that includes a lot of failure, right?
Right. Right.
Part of not caring, well, part of being okay with anything is 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 just not being dead set on what you think the outcome should be.
Yes. Like relinquishing the control of what this outcome like and the expectation of what it specifically needs to be or what it needs to look like, right? I mean,
And
like
that's so counterintuitive
yes.
to 30 years of sales and NLP and it's a numbers game and
Right.
influencing people
Right.
and this kind of thing. It's very, very counterintuitive. It sounds counterintuitive, but there really is it's not as encounter as it's not as counterintuitive as you think once you get into it, because always an under there's always an undertow of this kind of flexibility and this malleability in your
Right.
vision.
Yes, because like going back to what you said too, like when you define a specific objective or an outcome, like you are usually projecting that into the future based on like what you've experienced in the past and what's happening
Yes.
right now. And when you let
Yes.
go of like what that ideal outcome needs to be, then like you're just open to what is happening in here in the moment and then making the best decision for like what I have and my resources as far as like capital, network, leverage, all that stuff. And like my big motto going back to pandemic when you and I talked about it a lot in 2020 was like not trying to like stop trying to solve problems before they exist. Like letting
Yep.
go of like this is like all this is coming my way and I don't know how to handle it. And it's just like being present with what's happening here right now. And I think
Yes.
a big part of like building wealth, right, is like getting to the point where like you're financially free and defining that. I think there's like multiple ways you can define it. Like in a traditional sense, it's like, okay, I have enough productive capital invested so that I'm earning a yield and it pays for my lifestyle, right? Like I can live off of my investment portfolio. Great. But I think what we're truly after is like the feeling that we think we're going to get when that happens, right? And that
Yeah.
feeling we can achieve now. Like, and I think anybody that's watching this can witness why I feel like I have some taste of that, because it's you. Like, you've given me the ways to unlock the wealth that and the feeling that I'm seeking just now. And that comes with loving like my time that I get to spend now with the people that I want to do, doing meaningful
Yeah.
work. Like, when
Yes.
you're okay with your life now, just how it exists, and you let go of all that other control, then like, again, this goes back to like a theme of you and I a lot, is like getting to the truth. Like, when you don't have an experience or like a specific outcome, you allow things to just happen. And then like the truth sort of reveals itself as
Yeah.
you continue to just pull away at it and you just do it. And like, because failures are going to happen, and it's just a prerequisite to success or entrepreneurship, whatever you want to call it, then it's just like, you don't stop when you fail. Then it's just like, okay, that was part of the journey. It's part of the process. I learned, I got new input, and now I continue to just evolve and evolve and evolve.
And I don't, words have meanings, and I
Yes.
don't think when you're on this journey, there's no such thing as failure. There's only lessons learned.
Hmm.
And it's like the worst thing that could happen is that you never fail,
Right.
because because that either means you're not trying hard enough, or you're not challenging yourself enough,
Right.
or you're not being honest with yourself,
Yes.
because we don't know what we don't know.
Hmm.
Right. And I
Yes.
love this word, and I love this word reveals, or revelation, because it really, it forces you to live in the moment
Right.
and recognize what's happening in the moment. So at this point, instead of you being, the Genghis Khan of sales and just kill them all and let God sort them out,
Right.
you're very, very present in every single moment, and you're making
Yes.
conscious decisions based in your ethics, your morality, and your values, and you're maintaining that integrity of who you want to be.
Right.
That is your self-worth, right? That might not be your
Hmm.
financial worth, but that might be your self-worth. You don't feel like you have to sacrifice yourself for financial worth. And
Right.
I think that's how a lot of people act. They have to make these sacrifices. I have to do these things in order to get that money,
Yes.
right? And
Right.
the challenge is that's a transactional scarcity mindset. And then the goal is the money, but then once you have the money, now what?
Hmm.
That's the thing. It's not going to change who you are. It's just going to change some of the circumstances of some of the things in your life.
Right. 100%. And like the revelation, the relinquishing and control, like, it comes back to just being like, I'm happy with the way it is. Like, what I always go back to is like, even if I did have, all the money in the world, all, and I had access to it, like, what would I do differently? Like, the way that I
Yeah.
spend my time in my life now, I already feel like I've won. I already feel like I'm there. Like,
Yes.
that's a big part of it. And I think it's the same sort of thing. Like, I think people will sacrifice something now to feel like I have to do this now to get this X whatever in the future, right? But like, the weird thing about that is just in like coming back to just like, well, I'm going to do it now. And you like let go of control of the money in a sense. Like, anytime that I stop thinking about money is when I realized like I was being too, usually like consuming too much and being too selfish, rather than coming from a place of like, I need to produce, I need to serve, I need to help. And the money, like you said, is sort of a lag indicator of that. Like, it's just a byproduct of you putting value into the marketplace and people responding to your message or offer, whatever you're putting out there. And that is like, and like, it's the money attraction and whatever that sort of is. But like, it's just, again, it's like the lag of putting this out there and doing it, and and attracting people to you in a sense. Like, the people is where that money
Yeah.
comes from.
And it's a little bit longer of a game.
Yes.
It's not a transactional effort. It's not I put in a quarter and get out a gumball.
Right.
It's and you know this about me, and it's really funny, because as introverted as I am, and as small as my circle is, I am very, very good at investing and amplifying in the compound interest of trust and deep relationships with deep thinkers and people that I like. So I'm always trying to connect people with other people, and
Yeah.
you should meet this person. I think you two think a lot alike.
Right.
And that's one of the greatest joys of my life
Ah, it's
is just
beautiful.
looking for those opportunities to make those connections.
Right.
And that's, and you talk about compound interest in investment vehicles, but in
Mm.
relationship vehicles, the wealth that can come out of that is so exponentially greater than anything you could possibly conceive
Yes. Yeah.
in the moment,
Yes.
right? Because it's
100%.
so much bigger than you and your
Yes.
capability.
Right. And like that goes back to like a position of leverage too. And this is something that like I've learned
Yeah.
from you a lot is like building, like having a strong referral, not even like referral network, but just a strong network around you gives you a sense of feeling bulletproof in a way. It's like I don't necessarily need to have all the answers, but I can easily like connect you to someone that I know has all the answers, or just being that sort of that middleman of like, you're here, you need to get here. Here's the perfect person for you to have a conversation with. Like you've
Yeah.
opened me up to like that experience of being able to just to like be in a position to do that for other people is like one of the like, oh, I love getting to experience that. Like it puts a smile on my face every time of just like making that introduction. It's beautiful.
Well, and it makes me look like a rock star. I mean,
Yeah, right.
I can't even count how many times I've looked like an absolute rock star by saying, "You need to meet my boy Noah. I need to introduce you to this guy." And it's like it's like it really is, and it's like it's because I know you, and I respect you, and I appreciate what you do, and so I can feel good
Mm,
about sending people your way
right,
because we've invested in this relationship over the years, and
right.
we share that value,
Yes.
that value of listen. And then as far as, and on your side, you're like, well, if Scott trusts me with this, now you're hypersensitive to that relationship that you
Yes.
just started, because it comes with that transfer of trust comes with it.
100%.
So yeah, and it's like the wealth that's derived from that kind of mutual, respect and investing in those particular relationships. And I laugh because I don't have 100 people that I know that I would introduce one or two people to. I know about 15 or 20 people that I would introduce 100% of them to
Yes.
anybody.
Right.
Anytime I talk to somebody,
Yeah,
I'm
dude.
like, you need to talk to this person, this person.
I love it.
And that's that, I just love that there's a compound interest aspect to relationships.
All right, we are back after some technical difficulties, but so one other thing I want to talk to you about, and this like being my first experience building a podcast and doing these kind of longer form conversations, and this has taken me a while to almost like be well, one, like okay with putting my thoughts out there, like sharing things online. It's never something that I've done before, and you having
Oh,
decade plus of experience of doing that now. But like when you're doing like a podcast or being like a podcaster and are having these conversations, like what are because you have a podcast as well with Dustin and Ricardo, shout out. What are some of your like how do you approach podcasts? Like what's like the what are some keys to success for starting a new podcaster and just having these types of conversations?
man, I wish I had a key to success. I've done a lot of kind of broadcast, or call it one to many mediums.
Yeah.
Um, I've done radio shows before in the mortgage space. Well, wasn't in the mortgage space. It was with like a local college. It's Cal State Long Beach.
Okay.
We actually had a radio show that went out of there. And I've done a lot of podcasts. Honestly, and for me, it was a little bit harder because I am very introverted and I'm very self-conscious.
Mhm.
Um, and and I'm I'm scared to death of putting stuff out there and having people think that you're going to be stupid.
Yeah.
Um, but
Yes.
what's interesting is that it's here's the cool thing about podcasts and this type of one to many medium is, even though it's a one to many effort, so we are talking now to X in this equation, is we don't know what the audience is going to be for this conversation that we're
Right.
having.
Yep.
But it and so you have to, and then this again comes back to coming to terms with but it's something that I'm passionate about,
Uh,
and it's something that I
hmm.
really care about. So if you're passionate about it, and again, this comes down to intent. What is your intent? So the only
Yes.
reason we did the podcast with Dustin and Ricardo is because the three of us used to sit around all day and just talk about stuff.
Right.
And so the idea was, we're interested in what we're talking about. So why not put it into a medium where other people might be interested to be a fly on the wall with
Right.
our conversation?
Yes.
So I think that's really, really important, is it has to be something that you're genuinely passionate about.
Right.
Um, when it comes to podcasts, I love Joe Rogan.
Of
You
course.
know, you're into Joe Rogan too.
Absolutely.
He's just a curious soul.
Yeah.
Like he's just an unbelievably curious person, and he
Right.
doesn't walk into it with any preconceived notions. And one of the things that he
Hmm.
often says is he is never does not marry any ideas.
Hmm.
Like he never puts everything into one idea. He's
Yes.
always looking for ways to challenge his thoughts and challenge his ideas.
Right.
So he's genuinely curious.
Right. Right.
So, right now, this conversation, even though you and I have had this conversation 200 times, it's never been this conversation,
Right.
but the curiosity and the exploration that's happening in this conversation is something that you've always carried with you, and something that I always carry with me.
Yes.
So let's take a step back now. We're in a one to many medium, with the X factor in the equation being, we'll never know. You and I have no idea of, or no way to anticipate how many people this will reach. But
Hmm.
at the end of the day, this is a one-on-one conversation,
Yeah.
because only one person at a time is viewing this conversation.
Right.
So you just have to be yourself.
Hmm.
You have to be authentic. There has
Right.
to be some sort of genuine authenticity into what you do. And there's two reasons for that. Number one, you're not going to stick with it if you're just doing it because you're trying to monetize it.
Yep.
Like, I'm going to do this podcast because I want to monetize it. I'm going to start this YouTube channel
Mm.
because I want 100,000 subscribers and I want $10,000 a month in
Yes.
revenue.
Right. Again, specific like outcome and like expectation of what this
Correct.
needs to be.
Correct.
Yeah.
Good luck building that big of an audience if you think you're going to trick them into being a subscriber,
Dude. Yes.
right?
Right.
So, like, if you don't bring something genuine, and here's the thing,
Hmm.
there is the cool thing about the internet, and the cool thing about algorithms is there is an audience for everything.
Yep.
Like, you can literally be the person that is in this profession that loves French bulldogs, right?
I
So,
cozy.
and there is an audience for people that love French bulldogs,
Yeah.
that, oh wow, that guy loves French bulldogs and they're an expert in this. So I already know I share this with them.
Right.
So it's like, that's something you're passionate about. You're
Yeah.
passionate about your pet.
Right.
Nobody's passionate about money.
Mm.
Everybody's passionate about what they think money will do for them.
Yes, 100%. Oh, I love
Right.
that. There's two big things that come out of that. One, like I think starting in like marketing and Facebook ads, like something that I've struggled with, and I think that I'm starting to, I mean, I think it's still something that I struggle with, but sometimes like understanding like the amount of people that you can reach, or like building an audience like that, like it's something that I have a hard time almost like conceptualizing and grasping it sometimes. And the other part of it that I've learned a lot from you, and I think it's part of me maturing as a business owner and as an entrepreneur, of just like when I was getting started of like building a business online, it is very like you can get caught in the trap of like cookie cutter sort of like copy like a business model and paste it, and you're just, it is a very
Yeah.
transactional sort of play. And being around you and being around guys like, like being in the Perry Marshall sort of world, like
Yeah.
this idea of like art in business, and
Yeah.
being like not all business owners are like entrepreneurs, or business owners, but not all business owners are entrepreneurs, in a sense of like, this is our art, this is what we create, And that to me is very like it's something that I've been that I've struggled cultivating my own sort of approach, but like that to me is like a moat in your business. It's a competitive like way to, separate yourself of just being authentic and being true and being genuine. But like embracing that is very it's weird. It's a weird process of just being like, you know what? I'm just gonna do this. And this is like I feel compelled to have these conversations. I just need to put this out there and I have no idea what it's going to turn into. But I think again, like that's the magic of life and entrepreneurship and business is just like, well, I'm going to put it out there and like 6 months from now, this conversation is going to be funny because everything's going to look so different. Like all of this is going to shift and transition.
And there's really two pieces to this. There's authenticity and then there's exposure. And
Mm.
and they're not mutually inclusive. You can be very authentic and still need to invest in exposure mechanisms or processes or tools and things like that.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's that authenticity, that you bring to that. And so what I anytime I have a conversation with anybody about marketing or advertising or online creating content, I always tell everybody that there is no competition when you are when you're authentic online,
Yes.
because nobody else is you.
Right.
And when you're authentic, you are one of a kind. Now you have the challenge of exposure. So how do you get exposure for that authenticity? And then that's where you're targeting your algorithms and your marketing. And quite frankly, the single most important is consistency.
Mm.
So the consistency depends wholly on your passion for what you're talking about. So that goes back to your passion. There is no way you can force yourself to do something that you're not passionate
Yes.
about.
Right.
There's no way you can force yourself to do that consistently enough to get the results that you're desiring.
Yeah, and nothing ever is gonna come out of like it's the same thing with seeing results in working out in the gym of just being consistent, like, eating better, all that stuff.
And we're talking about two different things too here too. So you can be an e-commerce impulse buy internet marketer.
Right,
You can make a ton of money selling one-off widgets.
right.
Like you can. We're not that's not what I'm talking about. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that approach, but that approach is you're always trying to be one step ahead of the market, and then you're having to adjust your strategy once the market catches up.
Mm,
So you're always chasing something. But when you're authentic, that's a foundation that you build on that
yes,
never ever changes. You
yes,
can always learn new tactics, but you are never less authentic if you are just being your genuine self.
yeah.
And that's what's called
Wow,
building your online reputation in your business based on a foundation of trust and authenticity. Everything else is sand. Everything else moves. Everything else can give and change and that. But if you're a person that you have an audience of people that are loyal to you, and
mhm.
it's a difference between having customers and believers, right?
Yeah,
or
right.
or and believers is an exaggeration of what you're looking for, but it's really people who genuinely connect with you.
Right.
And you know this, when your very first conversation with a stranger sounds like they think that they've known you forever.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
100%.
They're just like, "Hey, Noah, you remember when you said that one thing?" And you're like, "I don't know. I recorded that 3 years ago,
Right.
but they saw it yesterday." And they've already made this personal connection with you. So now it doesn't matter if this business that you're launching takes off or not, or evolves into something else,
Right.
your audience stays with you.
Yeah. I think like up until this point, I mean, like the history that I had last year of building another business and sort of being,
Yeah.
exiting from that. That was the big, my big learning or takeaway from that is like I just didn't have, yeah, I don't have an audience. Like I don't have anybody that's like, and it's on of course it's a me thing, I need to be consistent with putting those conversations out there and just not really like I'm not going to do it for, yeah, exactly what you said. And I think, being a
But now you're
entrepreneur,
doing this.
right.
Now you're
100%.
doing this and if you stop to think, because you said this kind of earlier, but if you stop to think about how you feel about people judging your perspective or your ideas,
Hmm.
um, if you stop to think about it for a minute, you wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
But you took that fear, you packed it away, and you said, "Hey, buddy, let's have a one-on-one conversation."
Yeah,
And
that's it.
who cares what anybody thinks about it?
Right.
But because you enjoy this conversation, that you're going to attract other people that are also going to appreciate that
Dude,
conversation.
yes, 100%. I think like a big thing that I've learned about that too is like the fear that you have of launching a new business or approaching really like almost anything is like the fear never really goes away. You just get better at dealing with it. Like you just get better at processing it and like having like acknowledgement that it's there, but I'm not going to let it keep me from doing something that like I really truly just want to do. Like I think that, and like I feel like the pressure come off of me even on this conversation just talking about it, because like the big thing that I've worked through a lot, especially in the where I'm at, just sort of in the sequence of my life and my career, is not being like going back to the goal setting sort of thing. Like I have been asking myself like these kind of big overarching questions of like, what do I want this business to look like? What I want the targets like in my life to sort of be, and I'm trying to define it. And I was struggling with it, and I just for the last month or so, I just kind of let go of it, and I thought, what what do I want to feel like? What is it that I want to be? What do I want to do for a very long time? And when I just let go of that, and then it brought me back to being present and focus on what's happening here and now. And I'm like, you know what? I really do. I have this, network of entrepreneurs that are, I want to have these conversations with that I think are so valuable and so smart. And I just want to I want to release them. I just wanted to be open and free and just have these conversations. And I think like I'm okay with that. So if I could impart that on anybody that's watching, it's just you don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to start it and just do it and, just let it go. Let go of like the control 100%.
There's in the self-help industry, there's kind of a saying that people are motivated by one of two things, either to avoid pain or gain
Gain
pleasure.
pleasure. Yeah.
And
Mm.
I don't think that that's completely accurate in my life, because quite frankly, I thrive on chaos and I seek it out. Because it's an indication that you're outside of your comfort zone.
Yes.
And I want that chaos. I want to always be challenged. I want to be scared to death.
Right.
I want to I want to feel like if I don't die, I'll be successful. This will be successful. And for me, like, public speaking is one of those
Oh,
things.
wow, okay.
It's like I love public speaking, but I am scared to death and I turn inside out all the way up to the second when I get up on stage.
Wow.
But then the passion takes over. And it's the same thing like these conversations right here. It's like, is there something scary about us having this conversation? Absolutely. I don't know who's going to see this, but I'm
Yeah.
just like, I'm a high school dropout, and this kind of stuff. But that's just part of what shapes you. Those are the spices that make you the dish along the way that you end up being.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think you have to constantly be uncomfortable. I don't like the idea of avoiding pain. I think and it's not seeking out pain, but it's always being in the absolute ideal state, especially for an entrepreneur, is to be scared shitless
Hmm.
and do it anyhow.
Yes.
And it's like, if you
Mhm.
don't have that first piece of it, then you're not challenging yourself, and complacency is just a soul killer,
Right.
because you devolve into this thing where nothing really matters.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
it's like I like the pain. I like being uncomfortable.
Yeah, I don't know any other way to do it.
I don't know any other way to do it. And you start to, and at some point you get excited when you have an extreme challenge. You're like, oh boy, this one's going to test me.
Yep.
This is going to be a good one. I know there's something there though. What is it?
Yes.
Because so many of people in society spend their entire life looking through the rear view mirror, being pissed off that they just ran over the potholes, but they're not
Mm.
looking out the windshield, seeing the potholes coming. So
Yes.
they spend their entire life
Oh,
complaining
wow.
about what happened to them and not looking forward at where they could be and what they could do.
Yeah.
And it's
Wow.
like the past is the past. And if you can derive something, you can derive either, either opportunity, or you can be upset about something that happened. Again, this is the things you can control and the things you can't control.
Right.
You can't control what's in the road or around the corner, but you can control how you react when you hit that bump or you see that car coming on,
Yes.
coming head on.
Yeah,
You can
100%.
control that reaction in the moment.
The reaction, that's what it is. That's all we're responsible for is, like,
Yes.
our reactions to it.
Yes, yes, and how we process that information.
Right.
Do we process that information to reinforce the victim mentality that we already have?
Mhm.
Well, that's why I didn't succeed, because those external forces won't allow me to,
Right.
or do we say, "Wow, that sucked getting punched in the face like that. What do I need to do to not get caught by surprise by that
Yeah.
again?"
Yes.
And now you carry that armor with you for the rest of your life.
Right.
And because we only make those decisions once, and then we carry the benefits of it forward for the rest of our lives.
Wow. Wow. Jeez, 100%. Wow. Jeez. I really wanna have you back on to talk about our love for float therapy and sensory deprivation. We gotta
Oh,
talk about we
yes.
gotta talk about
Dude, you
that. We
changed my life with that.
Let's talk about it a little bit. Let's talk about it. So I found sensory deprivation. This was probably 2 or 3 years ago. I had gotten in a pretty severe car accident and I was dealing with just like back and shoulder pain. And so I tried it as just like a way to, and what I was dealing with was like whenever I would stop at a stoplight, I would see a car coming up behind me and I would kind of panic a little bit because I just thought I was going to get hit again. Like I was just really, really struggling with driving on the road. So I found sensory deprivation tanks. And if anybody that doesn't know it, it's basically just locking yourself in a space chamber and floating in like thousands of gallons or thousands of pounds of Epsom salt and a temperature that is or water. The temperature of the water is just exactly your body temperature. So just
Yep.
you see and hear and feel nothing all at the same time. And
Yeah.
the profound experiences that I've had in those tanks of just like having an hour to float feels like I can think for a
Yeah.
week and a month at a time. It's insane. And then of course I wanted to open that up and open those experiences to people that meant a lot to me. And so that was what I did. I think it was like a Christmas present. I gave you like a a free gift
Yeah,
card to
yeah,
go do
yeah. It
it.
was it was a gift certificate.
Yeah.
So, this gets into, so there's a therapeutic side to it, but for me, it's very metaphysical or spiritual,
Hmm.
because it it is such a loud world,
Yes.
and especially me being introverted, I spend most of my time inside my own head.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
you don't recognize how much stimuli there is in the world until you do something like that.
Right.
So I would say it's the same thing as prayer or meditation,
Yep.
or anything like that. But the challenge is even in any of those environments, prayer or meditation, you are not shutting off the entire world.
Right.
And by literally shutting off the entire world, not only shutting off the entire world, but detaching yourself from your physiology,
Yes.
because that's what the float tank is. Yeah, it's like 15 inches of water with 900 pounds of magnesium salts.
Yep.
And so, and you can't feel it. So eventually your body dissolves and you're
Mm.
just left with your mind. So I use one of these biometric
Yeah.
things.
Aura
This one's an
rings.
Aura ring.
Yep.
Yeah. And I used Whoop before that.
Yep.
And while physically I was not, it
Hmm.
registers a nap for me every time.
So
It gives
weird.
me a 30 to 45-minute nap.
Yep.
So there's 10 minutes of decompressing.
Right.
Yeah, and it completely changed my life. I do it every once a week.
I
and
love it.
it's I have my routine. It's 20 minutes in the infrared sauna,
Yep.
cold plunge for 3 to 5 minutes,
Insane.
another 20 minutes in the infrared, and then an
Oh,
hour
yeah.
and then an
Oh,
hour in the
beautiful.
float.
Yes.
And it's people like you, and I think people like me, we don't have a lot of consistency in our lives because we're always looking for that new experience, and we're always pushing,
Creating, doing something
we're
new,
always
different.
creating and
Yeah.
pushing, and it's like you said before, it's that artistic
Mhm.
way of living out your life.
Yes, right.
And and yeah, it you really just need, and I love Perry's metaphor of connecting with the head office,
Yep. The
that
muse.
the muse, the energy, the part of you that we often dismiss as, or define as instinct, is
Hmm.
really these epiphanies, or these realizations, these things that just come into our head, that you're like, where did that come from?
Right.
But
It's
like,
like tuning into like that wavelength of like the thought and the energy.
it's the ask and ye shall receive kind of
Yes.
thing. It's like when
Right.
you focus on something, and everybody listening to this has gone to bed with an issue,
100%.
and then woken up in the morning
Yes.
with the answer and has no idea
Right.
how you
Yeah.
got from A to B.
Right.
And the sensory deprivation float is you consciously carving out, this environment to allow yourself to have that experience, to
Yes.
connect with that muse.
That's the biggest thing right there. That's it. It's carving it out. I think like, we talk about like
Yeah.
work and hard work and like putting in the effort but like when you don't like create the constraint of allowing yourself to just think without an expectation, and you just sort of let like your thoughts flow, like that's where the deep kind of like profound epiphanies come from, of like, oh my gosh, like where did that, and you just like you allow sort of like the lines to sort of just like connect into itself, and without a like, okay, this is like a specific problem. Like, do you go in with like, I'm trying to solve this problem, or do you go in with just I'm going to allow things to flow the way that the way that the things are already going to naturally do it?
So my brain and my internal dialogue never shuts off.
Yeah. Right.
So I do not go in there with a specific,
Okay.
I
Yep. Same here. I
actually
don't.
purposely try to not go in there with a specific thought,
Right.
because that feels to me like you're trying, because who are we to know that that's even the right question?
Hmm. Interesting.
Right, because I don't know that I'm asking the right questions, and
Yes.
I would argue that overwhelmingly we do not ask the right questions.
Wow.
So I don't believe that there is ever an answer, but I do believe that there is always a
Hmm.
better question.
Wow.
And
Wow.
you will get
Sheesh.
information if you concentrate on that question, but it's not
Yes.
gonna be the answer. It's just gonna open the door to the next question.
Right. And if you're looking for a specific answer because like you have it already defined, then like you're just going to get the same sort of like,
Yes.
yeah. Wow.
Yes, there are no answers, there are only questions. Answers are
Jeez.
just the evolution of your questions.
Wow. 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 That's really interesting.
So I let it happen.
That's beautiful.
I 100% fully trust and believe in the muse, and you
Right.
can call it whatever you want.
Right.
You can name it whatever you want. You
Yep.
can, and I don't want to confuse people here by defining it for how I define it,
Yeah.
but that muse exists, and
Yes.
you have to let them play. You have to give them an environment where
Right.
they can thrive and they can
Right.
play.
And that's a
And
very vulnerable environment to be in, obviously, just floating in
because,
that tank.
because we're observers in that
That's
environment.
it. That's all we are. Well, I think it goes back to like what you said earlier of just like there's not a specific, I mean, like how did you phrase it? It's just like when you the beauty of that, of tapping into something like that, is putting you in a position to search for the answers within you rather than looking externally for like this course or this next person, or if I just read this, then like I'm gonna have all the answers. It's just like what you need is it within you, and defining that within yourself is really like how you unlock, in my opinion, your own abilities. Like I think the tank gave me like, oh, I'm everywhere and nowhere all at once. And the ideas of who Noah is and who Noah needs to be, for the most part, was projected onto me. And now I'm in a position where it's all shed and I can put it back and create it the way that I want to. And I'm comfortable of securing of just approaching that the way that I want to.
Let me drill down a little bit deeper on this, because there's a physiological vulnerability to floats that I think on a very primitive DNA level,
Mhm.
it's almost like it hijacks our system. And so human beings and oh, who was this? Who's the guy that did the new novas? Uh the physiology, the or the oh, I can't believe I can't remember his name right now.
Good thing
So
I got
so
Google. What is it? New Nova?
no, it's the astronomist guy. Neil
DeGrasse Tyson?
Neil deGrasse Tyson. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
So
Yeah.
Neil deGrasse Tyson, I heard him say
Oh,
one
the new
time.
Novas. Yes, 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 yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I heard Neil deGrasse Tyson one time say that human beings are the only animal that lay on their backs and look at the stars.
Okay. Wow.
Every other animal is either a prey or a predator, and they're looking down at the ground.
Whoa. Hmm.
And so when you and so
Hmm.
that act of vulnerability, that physical act of being vulnerable, now when you're in a float tank, you're butt naked,
Yeah. There's
it's
nothing.
dark,
Right.
and your arms and legs are kind of out there and you're spread out.
Right.
So if as meat, you are as vulnerable as you could
Right.
ever possibly get, because
100%.
your eyes are closed, it's dark, you can't see or hear anything.
Right.
And so there is this very, very primal vulnerability
Hmm.
that you're giving up control over what could happen to you in
Yes.
that environment.
Wow.
And that's quite frankly why some people can't do it.
Yep.
They can't be that vulnerable. By achieving that state of vulnerability is is really, really challenging, and it's really, really life changing.
Life changing. Yes. Like, and again, it's something obviously so out of a normal comfort zone because there is no other environment to experience anything like that. Like I remember the first time doing it, like I was afraid to be away from my phone for like 60 minutes. I was like, what's gonna happen? I'm gonna miss something. Like this was years ago now. And it's just it's so funny to like have been so aware of it when I was doing it. I was like, oh man, I really need to just I need this more than anything. It's the same sort of thing.
Yeah,
Like my I don't my thoughts don't shut down. This never stops. Like this is
yeah.
I've completely integrated like my work and my experiences in my life and my friendships and all of it. It's just all one. It's just me. Like this is something weird about entrepreneurship is like, and I'm curious that like if somebody asks you what you do, how do you define that usually? Like what do you usually tell people?
Oh man.
Because it's just like I just
I,
live.
I don't
It's just me,
I
right?
I don't. I usually laugh, and I usually just say, well, it's complicated.
Right.
It's just
It's just like how long do you want me to talk about this?
yeah, I mean, you know, I think at the end of the day, what I do is be present in every single moment.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
then where I am in that moment is what I am doing,
Yes.
but it's not what I do.
Yes. Oh, I love that. And like when you're present in the moment, like you're very in tuned with what's happening around you. You got your finger on the pulse of things and you can you can just feel like how things are shifting, like and how you position yourself. I think like that for me was something that like I struggled a lot with of just, and again, it goes back to like me being a planner, me liking having like outcome, like I like define, I like, I like systems, I like process, I like following, like this is the way that it's going to be. But that obviously it's not even like just like it can cap like your success or whatever it is, like it lowers like the experience of life like it's just not as like inviting to like to live that way. Like when you have like the wake up of just like, I don't know what today has in store, but I'm gonna approach it with just everything that I have and good energy.
Yeah,
Like that to me like is a, you know, that's a life well lived in my opinion. Or at least like that's the pursuit that I want to put myself on every day. So
that's
that's it.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Scott, I really appreciate you as always. Again, just to say thank you for taking a chance on me long before anybody ever did. You
Uh,
are a big, big reason why I have the clients that I have, the network that I have. Without you opening the doors into working with you, working with Josh, introducing me to Perry, introducing me to all these people, everybody in your network, like I just from the bottom of my heart, I want to say thank you. You really have made and such an incredible impact on me, and hopefully anybody watching this interview obviously will have some of those takeaways too. So thank you. You are a true gem of a human being. I don't know where I would be without you. So thank you. Truly thank you.
no, I appreciate that. But I mean, the feeling is absolutely mutual. I mean, I get, you exert so much energy, and I just, I love your perspective and your energy. And, this is, you created this experience and this relationship by just being who you are. So,
I love it. Thank you. I'm going to link anybody that's interested in learning more about Find My Way Home, maybe joining the network, wants to learn about your podcast or whatever we got. I'll put links in the descriptions as always. And of course, at some point, I'd like to have you back on because there's lots more for us to go into and lots of us to go
this is a
deeper
short
into.
conversation for us.
For
We
us,
we
right?
usually we can usually go a couple hours.
Yeah, I mean, we could definitely open this up at some point and go a couple hours, no doubt. So again, Scott, thank you so much for joining me today. I
Of
greatly
course.
appreciate it. And to all my builders out there, I salute you. Absolutely. And thank you for everybody listening, watching. If you're on YouTube, don't forget to, I'm new to this still, so don't forget to like and subscribe and comment if you like this episode. If you're following us on these podcast listening platforms, don't forget to follow and rate and review, I think is what you're supposed to do. But till next time, thank you, everybody, and I will see you guys in the next episode.